Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the 5 greatest wannabe Mahler conductors. This is a prelude to the 5 greatest Mahler conductors because, well, Mahler is really a phenomenon. And the phenomenon is that everybody does it now. I mean, it used to be kind of a specialty thing, and now it's just everybody does Mahler cycles, and they toss them off like there's like cheese and crackers. There's just an ordinary thing that you find in abundance, and there are some very, very famous names who have made something of a reputation as Mahler conductors. But they are wannabes. They are not the great Mahler conductors. And the great ones may surprise you. By great, I mean what we meant in our last discussion of the Beethoven piano sonatas, which means they've done all of it. That is, they've done all the symphonies without, some version of the 10th, an adagio or the whole thing. The completion doesn't matter. But they've done all the numbered symphonies, let's put it that way. And they have to do them with consistency and virtuosity and idiomatic insight and all of these things. And looking at Mahler cycles as a whole, rather than as individual outstanding performances, of which many people have done things like that, we find some fairly remarkable things. Different names percolate to the surface. By the way, I want to do a little bit of catch-up first. I need to digress on the Beethoven piano sonatas, because one of the things I said is that when you limit yourself, when you really limit yourself to just 5 names or a handful of names, it really makes you think. And it also, it seems to me, and it's worked. I was very pleased how well it worked. There is more of a consensus about what the really great versions of these things are than you might at first suspect, given the insane quantity of stuff that's available. And in the Beethoven piano sonatas, I had my list of 5, and 2 that I left off, well, really 3, but 2 that I left off really, really mattered, and I really think belong there. One was Annie Fischer on Hungaraton, and the other was Friedrich Gulda, his Amadeo cycle, which is, I just love that cycle. I could have very easily stuck it on my list, but I didn't have to, because you folks put it on your list very, very frequently. So Gould and Fischer definitely belong. Also Igor Levit, even though I said he was too young, really, I didn't need to get it for a consensus to emerge. It sort of started to emerge in the comments. That's the value, I think, of these talks, because it really does kind of make people think. So we are going to start this Mahler thing. There are 2 Mahler videos. First, the wannabe Mahler conductors. Then we'll do the great Mahler conductors, the greatest Mahler conductors. And we'll take it from there with the same criteria. They have to have done complete cycles. So that means, I'm sorry, folks, no Bruno Walter, no James Levine, no, but it's okay, because there's plenty of stuff that we can indulge in. So here are the 5 wannabes, the guys who did a lot of Mahler, but they never quite got to the ultimate echelon. First, Bernhard Haitink. Bernhard Haitink just ran around doing Mahler everywhere, just dribbled Mahler everywhere he went. His first Mahler cycle with the Concertgebouw had some glorious performances in it. Numbers 2, 3, 7 particularly. I loved his 9th as well, but elsewhere he was just tepid. I mean, that was the word. He just didn't have the gumption. The orchestra was wonderful to listen to, the Concertgebouw, of course, but Haitink was blah. He was blasé. He was bland. All the B's. And especially in numbers 5 and 6, his 8th was never anything special. He didn't like the work and never remade it. His first Symphony number 1 was kind of dull. His second one was really good. He did a bunch of 4ths. And then after he left the Concertgebouw, he ran around all of his other posts and did more Mahler. And it was catch as catch can. Could you piece together a great Haitink Mahler cycle? No, you can't, because he hated the 8th. So he took himself out of contention, in my view, and so he's first on our list of wannabes. The next wannabe is Claudio Abbado. Abbado was another one who ran around doing Mahler everywhere, just crazy stuff, as much as he could, duplicating performances unnecessarily. His best Mahler, most of his best Mahler, is his earliest in Chicago. He did numbers 2 and 5 and 6, and those were very, very good. Of course, he had the Chicago Symphony, which helped quite a bit. And elsewhere, he did a great first in Berlin, a live one, which was actually really, really good. He never quite got the Second Symphony, never quite got the Third Symphony. His fourth with Vienna and Frederico von Stade was supposed to be great, but it sounded awful on CD. It really did. He was another one who never quite came to grips with the eighth. His Berlin ninth was pretty good, but not really great. And then he made all those recordings in Lucerne, and those puzzled me tremendously because people went running around raving about them, but the Lucerne Festival Orchestra was never a great orchestra, and it was a pickup orchestra with some great players in it, but it wasn't a great orchestra, and his performances, alternated between somewhat superficial and rather slackly projected. I thought, anyway. I mean, you could do comparisons, and I think it's pretty obvious. Nor were they all that well recorded, as often as not. So Abbado, who was just a cipher as an interpreter, you never quite knew where he was or what he was about. He was kind of a micromanager sometimes, but when he was young, he hadn't quite, metastasized into the hyper neurotic picayune thing he later became. He did some great work, but there is no great Abbado Mahler cycle. Also, Pierre Boulez. Well, Boulez didn't do multiple Mahler cycles, at least, thank God for that. But Boulez was just too idiosyncratic. He was emotionally sterile and incredibly cold and detail-oriented. And as he got older, he just got sloppier. He did some beautiful, beautiful Mahler. He did. He did an amazingly fine first in Chicago. He really, really did. It was terrific. He did a very good fifth. He did a really, really fine seventh in Cleveland that was just strange and very modernist, and but his tendency was to underplay everything, essentially. I mean, sometimes he could really, pull it together and put over the work in terms of its, structural detail and sonic fascination. That's where that weird seventh comes in. But, in other places, he was just, his temperature was just too low. Who was he kidding? And despite the fact that modernists like Boulez felt obliged to do Mahler because Mahler was such an inspiration to the Second Viennese School, to all the music that came afterwards. So they want to go back to the source. But if you're going to go back to the source, you got to, do it with conviction. And sometimes I got a sense that Boulez was just beating time. I really did. Some good as a lot of it was. And it was. Next, for the Wannabe crew, Solti. Oh, Solti. Solti won Grammys on top of Grammys for his Mahler. And of course, he did a fabulous eighth that everybody is still excited about, even though it wasn't all that well recorded, but it was one hell of a performance. It was exciting. And that was the thing about Solti. He was exciting. And he did some Mahler with the London Symphony, then later the rest of it in Chicago. And the remakes were almost invariably worse than the originals. His first with the London Symphony was fabulous. His remake in Chicago was so-so. It had some missing cymbal crashes and things like that, which was very irritating. His Mahler 2 with the LSO was strangely recorded, but exciting. His remake with Chicago was also exciting, but not really as passionate and powerful, and it had really glassy digital sonics. He never got the third. All of his thirds were miserable. His fourths also not great. Probably his best was the first one with Sylvia Stallman in the Concertgebouw, but even there were things missing. His first fifth was marvelous in Chicago. Then he remade it, and it just sucked. His first sixth with Chicago, that he didn't remake, and that was very exciting. The seventh, too fast. it was mindless. He really didn't know what he was doing, especially in the finale, although it had some wonderful playing and some great things. The eighth, as I said, was terrific. The ninth, the one with the London Symphony, was terrific, very Richard Straussian, sumptuous and yummy, and with whooping horns, and oh, it was just great. And then he redid it in Chicago, and it was awful, just terrible. So, you know, there's Solti. He never quite got a great Mahler cycle together, especially because he just blew the third every time it swam into his orbit. So, you know, he's a Mahler wannabe. And last but not least, the ultimate Mahler wannabe, Simon Rattle. Of course, Simon Rattle did do an excellent Mahler 10th twice in the Cook completion. That was really, really good. He was real advocacy there. And he's done a couple decent Mahler things with Bavarian Radio. His last ninth was actually quite good. But elsewhere, he is the very apostle of Mahlerian mediocrity. There is nothing happening in his some of his Berlin, but in his City of Birmingham performances, they are just so second rate. And of course, we had, you know, the gramophone people in the English press having an orgasm every time a new one was released. It was just dreadful. But, you know, I mean, if there was ever a Mahler wannabe, it's Rattle. And I think that the audible evidence certainly bears that out. So those are the big five Mahler wannabes. The conductors who have gotten the most acclaim, the most attention, made the most recordings, and achieved the not quite top tier results in spite of it all. So stick with us, and next we will discuss the 5 greatest Mahler conductors. Don't jump the gun. We'll get there when we get there. If you have some other suggestions for Mahler wannabes that I think are worthy of being taken seriously, feel free to make them now. Keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.